"My son," said the voices stopped after the woman died. He said it so calmly, like he was telling me the rain had stopped. Like it was relief. Like it was finally over. "I'm Rebecca Hayes, and I'm recording this because no one will believe me. Not the police, not the psychiatrists, not even my own sister. They all think I'm protecting him. They think I'm a mother in denial, covering for a disturbed child who did something unthinkable. But they're wrong, because I've heard the voices too now, and I understand. God help me, I understand. It started 3 months ago. My son, Ethan, was 11 years old. Quiet kid, a little withdrawn maybe, but sweet. Always drew pictures. Always hummed to himself in his room. Teachers said he was bright but distracted, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. I thought it was just his imagination. Kids have imaginary friends. Kids daydream. Nothing unusual. Then came the night I found him in the hallway at 2 a.m. He was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, perfectly still. His eyes were open, but he wasn't seeing anything, just staring at his reflection with his head tilted slightly, like he was listening. "Ethan," I whispered, trying not to startle him. "Sweetie, what are you doing?" He didn't move, didn't blink. Then he spoke, but it wasn't his voice. Too deep, too old. "He's teaching me," Ethan said slowly. "He says I need to learn patience. He says anger is a gift if you know how to use it." "Who's teaching you?" "The whispering man." My blood went cold, not because of the name, but because I'd heard it before, years ago, in my grandmother's house, whispered in stories I wasn't supposed to hear. I grabbed Ethan's shoulders and shook him gently. He blinked, came back to himself, looked confused. "Mom, why are we in the hallway?" "You were sleepwalking, honey. Let's get you back to bed." He let me lead him back to his room. But as I tucked him in, he grabbed my hand, his grip too tight for a child. "Mom, do you ever feel angry? Like really, really angry? Like you want to hurt someone?" "No, baby. No, I don't." He smiled. Small, knowing smile that looked wrong on his face. "The whispering man says everyone does. He says some people are just too scared to admit it. I should have called someone then. A doctor, a therapist, anyone. But I was scared. Scared of what they'd say, what they'd think, what they'd do to my son. So I told myself it was just nightmares. Stress from the divorce. Kids process trauma in strange ways, but the sleepwalking got worse. I'd find him standing in different places every night. In the kitchen, staring at the knife block. In my room, watching me sleep. Once, I found him in the backyard at midnight, digging a hole with his bare hands. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "He says I need to practice," he mumbled, dirt under his fingernails. "He says you have to bury the anger deep, let it grow roots. Then when it's ready, you pull it up and use it." I made an appointment with a child psychologist the next morning. Dr. Brennan was patient, kind. She talked to Ethan for an hour while I sat in the waiting room. When she came out, her face was carefully neutral. That practiced professional calm that told me nothing and everything. "Mrs. Hayes, Ethan is experiencing some auditory disturbances. It's not uncommon in children his age, especially after parental separation. I'd like to start him on a mild medication and see him twice a week." "Is it serious?" She hesitated. "He's hearing a voice he calls the whispering man. The voice tells him things. instructs him. Ethan believes this entity has always existed in your family. He says it's been passed down through generations, waiting for the right child to listen. That's just imagination. Stories. Perhaps. But Ethan drew something during our session. She showed me a picture. Do you recognize this symbol? My stomach dropped. It was a circle with 3 lines cutting through it, meeting at a point in the center. I'd seen it before, carved into the floorboards of my grandmother's attic, scratched into the walls of the house where I grew up. Where did he see this? I demanded. He says the whispering man showed him. Says it's the family mark, the sign of inherited anger. I drove home in a daze. Ethan was quiet in the back seat, humming that strange tune again. That night, I went to my mother's storage unit, dug through boxes of old family documents until I found what I was looking for. My great-grandmother's journal. The entries were disturbing. The boy hears him now, just like his father did, just like I did when I was young. The whispering man comes to the angry ones, the ones who've been hurt, abandoned, broken. He offers them power. He teaches them to embrace the rage instead of hiding it. My father said it started with our ancestor in the old country, a man who was wronged so deeply that his fury wouldn't die. It found a way to persist, to pass down through bloodlines. Waiting, always waiting for a child who would listen. My son killed the neighbor's dog today, strangled it with his bare hands. He said the whispering man told him it was practice. I should stop him, but I hear the whispers too sometimes, late at night, telling me things I already think, but won't say out loud. Telling me it's okay to hate. It's okay to want revenge. It's okay to hurt the people who hurt us. The curse can be broken, the old stories say, but only if the chosen child refuses to act, refuses to release the anger, if they can resist until they're grown. The whispering man moves on, but if they give in, if they use the anger he's been feeding, then it's permanent. The inheritance is complete. I stayed up all night reading. By dawn, I understood. The whispering man wasn't a ghost or a demon. He was the accumulated rage of generations. Trauma passed down like DNA. Anger that couldn't die, because it kept finding new hosts, new children to poison with inherited fury. And my son was the latest recipient. I tried everything after that. Different medications. Therapy, 3 times a week. I moved us to a new apartment, thinking distance would help. I even took Ethan to a priest who performed some kind of blessing. Nothing worked. The voices got louder, more insistent, and Ethan started changing. He stopped smiling, stopped playing, just sat in his room for hours, drawing that symbol over and over, filling notebooks with it, covering his walls. He's getting impatient, Ethan told me one morning. He says I'm ready now. He says there's someone I need to hurt, someone who deserves it. No one deserves to be hurt, baby. That's not true. His eyes met mine, and they were cold, empty. You know it's not true, Mom. You think about it too. About Dad leaving. About how he just walked away like we meant nothing. The whispering man says you hate him. He says you want him to suffer. Stop it. That's not real, isn't it? He tilted his head, listening to something I couldn't hear. The whispering man says you're just like me. You're just better at hiding it. 3 weeks later it happened. Our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, complained about Ethan for the last time. Said he was staring at her through her kitchen window. Said he was leaving dead birds on her doorstep. Said she was calling Child Protective Services. I tried to apologize. Tried to explain that he was sick, that we were getting help. She called me a bad mother. Said I was raising a monster. Said she'd make sure they took him away from me. That night, I heard Ethan's door open, heard his footsteps in the hallway. I got up to check on him, but he wasn't sleepwalking this time. He was fully awake, fully aware, and he was heading for the front door. "Ethan, where are you going?" "The whispering man says it's time. He says Mrs. Patterson is the one. She's mean. She's cruel. She deserves what's coming." "No, absolutely not. Get back to bed." He turned to look at me, and in that moment, I saw something else behind his eyes. Something old and patient and hungry. "You can't stop it, Mom. It's already decided. This is what we do. What our family has always done. We punish the people who hurt us." I tried to grab him, tried to hold him back, but he pushed past me with strength that shouldn't have been possible for an 11-year-old boy. By the time I called 911, it was over. They found Mrs. Patterson in her kitchen. The details. I won't describe the details, but it was violent, brutal, the work of someone filled with years of accumulated rage. Ethan was standing over her, covered in blood, crying. "The voices stopped, Mom," he said when the police arrived. "The whispering man is quiet now. He's satisfied." The trial was a nightmare. Ethan was too young for adult court, but the prosecutor pushed for the maximum juvenile sentence. My lawyer argued mental illness, diminished capacity, psychiatric intervention. The judge sent him to a secure facility for disturbed youth. Said he'd be evaluated every 6 months. Said maybe, with intensive treatment, he could be rehabilitated. But I knew better. Because the night after the sentencing, I heard it for the first time. Whispering. Soft, persistent whispering coming from inside my own head. "Your son completed his inheritance. Now it's your turn." I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was grief, trauma, guilt. But the voice got stronger. "You're angry, Rebecca. Angry at your ex-husband. Angry at the system that took your boy. Angry at Mrs. Patterson for pushing him to this. Angry at yourself for not stopping it. All that rage. It needs somewhere to go." I started having the same dreams Ethan described. Dreams of digging holes. Dreams of blood. Dreams of hurting the people who'd hurt my family. Last night, I woke up standing in my ex-husband's driveway. I don't remember driving there. Don't remember getting out of my car. But I was there, holding a kitchen knife, staring at his bedroom window. The whispering was so loud. "He abandoned you. He left his son. He deserves to pay. You know he does. Just go inside. Just do what needs to be done. Finish what Ethan started." I dropped the knife, got back in my car, drove home shaking, but the voice didn't stop. It never stops now. This morning, I visited Ethan at the facility. He looked different, calmer, almost peaceful. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked. "You look tired." "I'm fine, baby." "No, you're not." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You hear him now, don't you? The whispering man moved on. He's done with me. He's teaching you now." "Ethan, please." "It's okay, Mom. It's easier once you give in. The anger feels so good when you finally let it out. The whispering man says, you'll understand soon. He says you're ready." I left before I could hear anymore. But as I was walking to my car, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Laughter talk. Soft, childish laughter coming from somewhere behind me. I turned around, but there was no one there. Just the sound of Ethan's voice, drifting from his window on the second floor. "The voices stopped after the woman died, Mom. But they come back. They always come back. And when they do, they're hungry. I'm recording this because I don't know how much longer I can fight it. The whispering is constant now, telling me who deserves to suffer, telling me where they live, telling me exactly how to make them pay. My ex-husband, the prosecutor, the judge, the doctor who put Ethan on medication, that didn't work. The neighbor across the street who testified against us. The whispering man has a list, and every night the list gets clearer. I understand now why my great-grandmother couldn't break the curse. Why generation after generation gave in. Because the anger isn't just in your head, it's in your blood, your bones, your DNA. It's the inheritance we can't refuse. I'm going to try to fight it. Going to try to be stronger than my son was. But late at night, when I'm alone, I can feel it growing. The rage, the fury, the need for revenge. And the worst part? The part that terrifies me most? Part of me wants to give in. Part of me thinks the whispering man is right. Part of me wants to hurt the people who destroyed my family. I can hear Ethan's voice again, though he's miles away in that facility. The voices stopped after the woman died, Mom. But they come back. They always come back. And when they do, they're so hungry. Evil doesn't begin. It continues, passed down like blood, waiting for the next child to listen, waiting for the next mother to break. And the whispers? They never really stop. They just find new ears, new hosts, new hands to do the work that rage demands. Rebecca Hayes was found 3 days after this. Recording was made. She had driven to her ex-husband's house in the middle of the night. Neighbors called police after hearing screaming. When officers arrived, they found Rebecca standing in the driveway, covered in blood, whispering to herself. The voices stopped. She kept saying. The voices finally stopped. Her son Ethan was interviewed about his mother's actions. He showed no emotion. When asked if he had anything to say, he simply smiled and whispered, "The whispering man is patient. He'll wait for the next one. He always does." Psychiatric evaluation revealed a family history of violent episodes spanning 7 generations. Each incident involved a parent or child committing an act of extreme violence, following reports of hearing voices. The symbol found in Rebecca's car, a circle with 3 intersecting lines, matches markings found at crime scenes involving her ancestors dating back to 1843. No one knows where the curse began, but the pattern continues. Waiting, whispering, hungry, always hungry.
Gideon only wanted to drive home after the funeral. But the woman on the roadside had other plans. The desert stretched endlessly in both directions. Mile after mile of rust-colored earth, twisted juniper, and sky so large it made the world feel small. Gideon Reeves had been driving for 6 hours straight. His father's funeral had ended at 2 p.m. The cremation was scheduled for tomorrow. He couldn't face the empty house tonight. So he drove east on Highway 95, deeper into the high desert of eastern Oregon. Toward nothing. Toward the endless nothing he'd always found comforting. At mile marker 143, he saw her. A woman stood alone on the shoulder, barefoot, wearing a sundress torn at the hem. Her dark hair was matted, and there was blood on her face. Not a lot. Just enough to be wrong. She was waving. Gideon's first instinct was to keep driving. He'd learned in 38 years that stopping for strangers on empty highways was how people disappeared. But as he passed, she turned to look at him. Her eyes were terrified, desperate. He couldn't ignore that. He pulled over about 200 yards ahead and waited. The woman ran toward the car, barefoot on the asphalt. When she reached the passenger window, she was breathing hard. "Please," she said. "Please let me in. He's still out there." "Who? What happened?" "My husband, Derek. He was chasing me. He had his hands on me and we struggled and he fell and hit his head and I think I killed him." Her voice was shaking. Everything about her was shaking. Gideon looked back at the highway behind them. Nothing but empty road and distant heat shimmer. "Get in," he said. She introduced herself as Iris. No last name, just Iris. She sat in the passenger seat with her bare feet barely touching the floor, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "How far are you going?" she asked. "Burns. About 2 hours." Okay, that's okay. Thank you so much." She kept thanking him, over and over, like gratitude was the only thing holding her together. The first few miles were quiet. Gideon drove. Iris stared out the window. Then, she started talking. Her voice was soft, like she was confessing something she'd been holding inside for years. She told him about Derek, about the drinking, about the nights when she'd lock herself in the bathroom, about the constant apologies, the constant promises it would be different. "This time it was different," she whispered. "This time he said he'd change, said he'd get help, and I believed him for maybe 3 days. What happened? He found my phone. I'd been texting a friend, just talking to a friend, and he lost it. Said I was making plans, that I was betraying him. He grabbed my wrist and I tried to pull away and we were struggling and then..." She trailed off. "He fell? We both fell. We were near the edge of the road. There was a slope, rocks, and when I looked back, he wasn't moving." "Did you call for help?" "I didn't have my phone. He took it. I just ran. I saw your car coming and I just ran." Gideon didn't know if he believed her, but he knew he couldn't leave her on the highway alone. So he drove, and she stared out the window, and the desert went on forever. After an hour, Gideon saw the sign. Burns, 67 miles. He frowned. That couldn't be right. When he'd passed the turnoff for Highway 20, he should have been maybe 40 miles out. He glanced at his odometer. 62 miles since he'd picked her up. That was too far for 67 miles to Burns. "That sign's wrong," Iris said quietly. "I saw it when we passed earlier. Same distance, same sign. That was, 40 minutes ago?" "An hour," she corrected. "We've been driving for an hour." Gideon didn't respond. He told himself the sign was old. Probably hadn't been updated in years. The highway department was always behind on maintenance. But as the next hour passed, and the landscape remained exactly the same, and the sun hung in the sky without moving, he saw the sign again. Burns, 67 miles. "That's not possible," he said. Iris didn't answer. He looked at her. She was staring straight ahead, her hands still clasped in her lap. "Iris, how many times have you seen that sign?" "I don't know," she whispered. "They all look the same. Maybe we missed the turn." "There is no turn. Highway 95 is straight. Burns is straight. Then we're going in circles." But they weren't going in circles. Gideon was driving in a straight line. He'd been driving in a straight line for 2 hours. The odometer read 124 miles. They'd driven 124 miles. They should have passed Burns an hour ago. He pulled over, climbed out of the car and looked back the way they'd come. The road stretched behind them, flat and empty and endless. He turned around. The road stretched ahead in exactly the same way. Same rocks, same scrub brushed, same heat shimmer in the distance. It was like the world had been photocopied and pasted infinitely in both directions. When he got back in the car, the smell hit him. Sudden, overwhelming, like copper and old blood and something rotting. "Do you smell that?" he asked. Iris didn't move, didn't answer. "Iris?" He looked at her. She was staring at her bare feet, at the blood that was now running down her legs. More blood than before. Much more. What happened to you?" he asked. "Derek," she whispered. "He didn't fall alone." Gideon started the car. He was going to get out of this loop. There was a logical explanation. There had to be. He pressed the accelerator. The landscape blurred past. The odometer climbed. 150 miles. 175. 200. And then, the sign appeared again. Burns. 67 miles. He kept driving. Night fell. The stars came out. The road remained identical. Iris began to bleed through the passenger seat. "Stop," she said. "Stop the car." "No, I'm getting us out of here." "You don't understand." Her voice was different now. Colder. "We can't leave. Derek won't let us leave." Gideon turned to look at her. In the darkness, with only the headlights and dashboard glow, he could see that her face was wrong. The injury was worse. Her jaw was... no, not worse. Different. Like it was changing. Healing and breaking at the same time. "Stop the car," she said again. But she didn't sound like Iris anymore. She sounded like something imitating Iris. Something that had been wearing her voice but was tired of the performance. Gideon turned around. Behind them, in the darkness of the highway, there were headlights. Getting closer. Getting closer. A truck. Moving fast. Impossibly fast. Closing the distance at speeds that shouldn't be possible. He pressed the accelerator harder. But his car wouldn't go faster. It was locked. Bound. Caught. The truck behind him was right there now. He could see the driver through the windshield. It was a man. Pale, with blood running down his face from a wound at his temple. "Derek." "You can't escape," Iris said. "He won't let you. He'll never let you go. You picked me up. You became part of it." "Part of what?" "The debt," she whispered. "We struggled on the highway. I ran. He followed. And now, the truck hit them." The impact sent Gideon's car spinning. Metal screaming. Glass shattering. The world turning upside down. And then, stillness. Gideon opened his eyes. He was sitting in his car. On the highway. The engine was off. His hands were on the steering wheel. And on the passenger seat beside him was Iris. Barefoot, torn sundress, blood on her face. She was waving at him. "Please," she said. "Please let me in. He's still out there." Behind them, impossibly far behind them, were headlights. Getting closer. Getting closer. Gideon looked at the dashboard. The odometer read 0 miles. The fuel gauge was full. And when he looked ahead, there was a sign in the distance. Burns, 67 miles. He pressed the accelerator. The car began to move. Iris sat silently in the passenger seat, waiting, bleeding, repeating the same words in a voice that sounded less and less like a woman and more like the sound the highway makes at night. The sound of something hollow, something hungry, something that feeds on strangers who stop to help. The truck behind them was getting closer, and Gideon understood then. He would never reach Burns. He would never leave the highway, because there was no rescue. There was no escape. There was only the endless desert, the endless road, and in the passenger seat, forever waiting for the next person kind enough to stop. Some highways don't lead anywhere. They just keep turning, keep feeding, keep waiting for the next stranger, the next driver, the next person with a good heart, the next person willing to help the woman on the roadside, the next person destined to become part of the loop.
Have you ever watched a live news report and noticed something in the background that wasn't supposed to be there? Something that made you question what you were really seeing? My name is Nina, and I work as a morning news producer at Channel 7. Been there for 6 years, ever since my divorce left me scrambling for steady work. The job pays well enough to support me and my daughter Emma. And honestly, I love the chaos of live television. The unpredictability, the adrenaline rush when everything goes perfectly, or when everything falls apart. October 15th started like any other Tuesday. We were preparing for our 7 a.m. broadcast, running through the usual morning segments. Weather, traffic, local interest pieces. Nothing that should have changed my life forever. Our reporter Lisa Martinez was doing a live remote from Riverside Elementary School, covering their annual fundraising drive. Standard feel-good story. Perfect for the morning crowd. I was watching from the control room as Lisa set up her shot in front of the school's main entrance. Everything looked normal at first. Lisa testing her microphone, camera operator adjusting the frame, early morning joggers occasionally passing in the background. Just another routine broadcast. Then, at exactly 7:23 a.m., I saw something that shouldn't have been possible. In the window behind Lisa, on the second floor of the school, there was a child's face pressed against the glass. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with long dark hair and wide, terrified eyes. The school had been closed for 3 days due to a broken heating system. No students, no staff, no one should have been inside that building. I grabbed my headset. Lisa, can you hear me? There's someone in the school behind you. What do you mean, Nina? Lisa's voice crackled through my earpiece. Second floor, third window from the left. There's a child up there. Lisa turned around to look, but by the time she did, the window was empty. I don't see anything, Nina. Are you sure? I rewound the live feed on my monitor, playing back the last 30 seconds. The child was clearly visible for almost 10 seconds, pressed against the glass like she was trying to get someone's attention, trying to signal for help. But when I called the school's main office to report it, they insisted the building was completely empty. Had been since Friday afternoon when the heating broke down. Must have been a reflection, our news director Mike told me later. Or maybe shadows from the trees outside. But I knew what I'd seen. A terrified child, trapped inside a supposedly empty building. I couldn't let it go. That afternoon, I drove to Riverside Elementary myself. The parking lot was empty, just like they'd said. But as I walked around the building, checking windows and doors, I found something disturbing. The side entrance door was slightly ajar. Not broken, not forced open, just unlocked, like someone had left it that way on purpose. I should have called the police, should have reported the security breach, and let them handle it. But something about that little girl's expression haunted me. The way she looked directly at the camera, like she was begging for help. I went inside. The hallways were dark and eerily quiet. My footsteps echoed off empty walls, covered with children's artwork and motivational posters. Everything looked normal, except for the sounds. Soft footsteps above me, the creak of floorboards, muffled voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I followed the sounds to the second floor, to the exact classroom where I'd seen the girl in the window. The door was locked, but through the small glass panel, I could see someone inside. The same dark-haired girl from the broadcast. She was sitting at a desk in the corner, perfectly still, staring straight ahead. Not moving, not blinking, just waiting. I knocked on the glass. "Hey, are you okay? Can you hear me?" The girl turned toward the door slowly, and when our eyes met, she mouthed a single word. "Help!" I tried the door handle again, searching for another way in. But when I looked back through the window, the classroom was empty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the footage from that morning, studying every frame. The girl had been real. I was certain of it. But the more I watched, the more details I noticed that didn't make sense. The child's reflection wasn't showing in any of the other windows. The lighting on her face didn't match the morning sun. And, strangest of all, she cast no shadow on the classroom wall behind her. I started researching the school's history, looking for any reports of missing children or unexplained incidents. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 years ago, a 9-year-old student named Emma Thornfield had disappeared from Riverside Elementary during recess. She was there for morning attendance, then simply vanished sometime between 10 and 11 a.m. The search lasted for weeks. Police, FBI, hundreds of volunteers combing the area. But Emma was never found. No trace, no witnesses, no clues. She just disappeared. The case went cold after 6 months. But here's what bothered me. Emma Thornfield looked exactly like the girl I'd seen in the window. Same dark hair, same age, same terrified expression. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. That grief and stress were making me see things that weren't there. But then I started noticing the girl in other places. During our Wednesday morning broadcast from the farmer's market, she appeared in the background of our live shot, standing between vendor stalls, staring directly at the camera. Thursday's weather segment from the downtown park. There she was again, sitting alone on a bench behind our meteorologist, completely motionless, while other people walked by. Friday's traffic report from the highway overpass. The girl stood at the railing, visible for just a few seconds before the camera angle changed. Each time, I was the only one who noticed. The other producers, the camera operators, even the reporters in the field. None of them saw what I was seeing. I started recording every broadcast, building a collection of screenshots showing Emma Thornfield appearing in impossible places. Always in the background, always staring at the camera, always trying to communicate something I couldn't understand. My colleagues started noticing my behavior. The long hours I spent reviewing footage, the way I'd suddenly stop conversations to stare at monitors, the dark circles under my eyes from not sleeping. "Nina, maybe you should take some time off?" Mike suggested during our Monday staff meeting. "You've been under a lot of stress lately." But I couldn't stop. Because over the weekend, I'd made a connection that changed everything. I'd been going through old missing person reports when I found another case. Jessica Chen, age 8, disappeared from Lincoln Elementary 2 towns over 4 years ago during a school assembly. Then Maria Rodriguez, age 9, vanished from her classroom at Oakwood Elementary 5 years ago, middle of a regular Tuesday morning. 7 girls total, all between ages 7 and 10, all disappearing from schools during regular hours over the past decade, all within 50 miles of our broadcast area, and all of them had started appearing in our live news reports. I printed photos of each missing girl and compared them to my screenshots from recent broadcasts. They were all there, scattered throughout our morning shows like a desperate gallery of the lost. standing behind reporters during crime scene coverage, sitting in restaurant windows during food segments, walking through crowds at community events. 7 dead children using our live television broadcasts to show themselves to the world. But why? What were they trying to tell us? The answer came during Tuesday's morning broadcast. We were covering a charity drive at Millbrook Community Center when I spotted not just one, but all 7 girls standing together behind our reporter. They weren't just staring at the camera this time. They were pointing. All of them. Pointing toward the same building across the street. A small white house with a chain-link fence and overgrown yard. The address was clearly visible on the mailbox. 479 Oak Street. I left work immediately and drove to the address. The house looked abandoned. Windows boarded up, grass knee-high, no signs of life. But as I walked around the property, I could smell something terrible coming from the basement. Something sweet and rotten and wrong. I called 911. The police found them 3 hours later. 7 small skeletons, carefully arranged in the basement like they were sleeping. Each girl's school backpack hung on hooks along the wall, their names written in faded marker. Emma Thornfield, Jessica Chen, Maria Rodriguez, all of them. The homeowner, 67-year-old Robert Hammond, had worked as a substitute teacher for 15 years, moving between schools, gaining access to children, selecting his victims carefully. He'd been arrested the day after I called in the tip, confessed to everything within hours of being questioned. But here's what the police don't know. What I've never told anyone. The night before that final broadcast, I woke up at 3 a.m. to find Emma Thornfield standing at the foot of my bed. Not on a TV screen this time. Right there in my bedroom, as real and solid as I am. She looked peaceful for the first time since I'd started seeing her. No more terror in her eyes, no more desperate attempts to communicate. She smiled at me and whispered, "Thank you for watching. Thank you for seeing us." Then she faded away like morning mist. The other girls stopped appearing in our broadcasts after that. The case was closed. The families finally had answers, and 7 lost children could finally rest. But I kept the screenshots. All of them. Because sometimes, late at night, when I'm reviewing footage for the next day's show, I catch glimpses of other faces, other children standing in backgrounds where they shouldn't be, trying to tell us things we're not ready to hear. I've learned to pay attention now, to look beyond the obvious story and see what's really being broadcast. Because live television doesn't just capture what's happening in the moment. Sometimes it captures the voices of those who can no longer speak for themselves. If you ever see something strange in the background of a news report, something that doesn't belong, don't dismiss it as a trick of light or shadows. Look closer, because the dead don't rest quietly when their stories remain untold. And sometimes the only way they can reach us is through the very medium that connects us all. The most powerful broadcasts aren't always the ones we plan. They're the ones that find us when someone who can't speak any other way finally finds a voice that carries across the silence between worlds.
I still hear it sometimes, that sound. It starts low, like wind through a cracked window, then rises into something that shouldn't exist. A shriek that tastes like copper pennies and smells like wet earth. The kind of sound that makes your teeth ache and your spine go cold. The Aztec death whistle changed everything, and I need to tell someone before it's too late. My name is Ben, and I was 17 when we found it. I wasn't popular, just another kid who ate lunch alone, sketching in notebooks while everyone else had friends. My parents worked double shifts, so home was just empty rooms and microwave dinners. The loneliness sat on my chest like a weight, making it hard to breathe sometimes. The only people who talked to me were the other outcasts. There was Lily, who wore all black and read tarot cards during study hall. Jake, whose stutter made him an easy target for bullies. Emma, who'd moved here from foster care and trusted no one. And Theo, brilliant but anxious, always picking at his cuticles until they bled. We weren't friends exactly, more like survivors huddled together in the same lifeboat. Everything changed the day we broke into the old Hartley Museum. It had been closed for years after the curator died under mysterious circumstances. Theo had found a way in through a broken basement window. We were just bored kids looking for adventure, maybe some Instagram photos to prove we weren't complete losers. The museum smelled like mold and forgotten things. Our phone flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating dusty display cases and cobwebs thick as curtains. Most of the valuable items had been removed, but in the pre-Columbian section we found it, a small clay skull, no bigger than my fist, with hollow eyes and an open mouth frozen in an eternal scream. "Check this out," Jake said, his stutter barely noticeable in his excitement. He lifted the skull from its case, and I saw it was actually a whistle. The placard beneath read, "Aztec Death Whistle, used in sacrifice rituals to summon Mictlantecuhtli, Lord of the Dead." Emma dared him to blow it. We all laughed nervously, the sound echoing in the empty museum. Jake raised it to his lips, and I wanted to tell him to stop, but peer pressure is a powerful thing when you're desperate to belong. The sound that came out wasn't music. It was pure terror given voice. 100 people screaming, wind howling through bones, the last breath of something dying. The windows rattled. My ears rang. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant, and I tasted blood in my mouth. We ran like our lives depended on it, Jake still clutching the whistle. Outside we bent over, gasping for air, trying to laugh it off. But something had changed. The world felt different, thinner somehow, like reality was just a sheet we could tear through. That night, I couldn't sleep. My room felt wrong. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper, and I kept hearing whispers just below the threshold of understanding. When I finally dozed off, I dreamed of Jake. He was older, maybe 30, standing on a bridge. He looked right at me, opened his mouth to speak, and then jumped. I woke up screaming. Jake didn't come to school the next day. Or the next. When they found his body at the bottom of Riverside Bridge, the news said he'd been sleepwalking. But I knew better. The coroner said something strange. Jake had aged. His body showed signs of being years older than 17. Nobody could explain it. At the funeral, Lily grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. "I dreamed about him," she whispered. "On the bridge, just like how he—" She couldn't finish. Emma and Theo nodded. We'd all had the same dream. The whistle had disappeared from Jake's room. His parents hadn't seen it. But 2 nights later, Lily called me sobbing. She'd found it in her backpack. She swore she hadn't taken it, but there it was, cold clay against her textbooks. She wanted to throw it away, but Emma convinced her to keep it. We needed to understand what was happening. We met at the library searching for anything about Aztec death whistles. Theo found an old anthropology journal that made my blood run cold. The whistles weren't just instruments, they were summoning tools. When blown, they called forth the death that awaited the user, pulling their future demise into the present. The person would die exactly as they were meant to, just decades early. "We need to destroy it," I said. But Lily was already shaking her head. Her face had gone pale and she was staring at something behind me. I turned, but nothing was there. Just empty air that felt too thick, too cold. That night, Lily dreamed her own death. She called me at 3 a.m., voice hollow. Fire, she whispered. I'm old, in a house, and there's smoke everywhere. I can't get out. I can't. The line went dead. They found her in her bedroom. The space heater had malfunctioned, they said. Faulty wiring. But her body was wrong, just like Jake's. The auto-PSY showed lungs damaged by decades of smoke inhalation that hadn't existed the day before. Her hair had gray streaks that weren't there at school. Emma broke after that. She tried to burn the whistle, but it wouldn't catch fire. She threw it in the river, but it appeared in her locker the next morning. She even took a hammer to it, but the clay wouldn't crack. The whistle wanted to be heard. It demanded to be blown. Theo thought he'd found a solution in an old book about Aztec rituals. The curse could be broken if we returned the whistle to sacred ground, specifically, to a descendant of the priests who'd created it. He'd tracked down a professor at the state university who claimed Aztec heritage and studied pre-Columbian artifacts. It was a long shot, but we were desperate. The three of us drove through the night, the whistle wrapped in cloth in the trunk. Every mile felt like a countdown. Emma kept checking the mirrors, swearing something was following us. Theo wouldn't stop scratching his arms, leaving bloody tracks. I gripped the wheel and tried not to think about my own dreams, the ones where I was old and alone, dying of a heart attack in an empty apartment. Professor Itzel Morales lived in a small house near the university. She answered the door at dawn, taking one look at our faces and the bundle in Theo's shaking hands. "You foolish children," she said, but she let us in. She unwrapped the whistle carefully, her face grave. "This is not Aztec," she said finally. "The craftsmanship is wrong. This is something else. Older. Hungrier." She explained that before the Aztecs, there were other civilizations, other gods. Gods that fed on shortened lives and stolen years. "Can you help us?" Emma begged. Professor Morales shook her head slowly. "The whistle chooses its victims. It will not stop until it has claimed all who heard its call. But... Hey." She hesitated. "There is one way. Someone must blow it again, accepting their fate fully. Their willing sacrifice might satisfy it." We sat in silence, the weight of her words crushing us. Then Theo reached for the whistle. His hands were steady for the first time in days. "I'm already dying," he said quietly. "The dreams showed me. Cancer. In my 50s. Alone in a hospital." He looked at us with sad eyes. "At least this way, it means something." Before we could stop him, he raised the whistle to his lips. The sound was different this time. Sadder, like a funeral dirge. Theo aged before our eyes, his hair whitening, his skin wrinkling. He smiled once, then crumbled to dust that smelled like hospitals and regret. The whistle fell to the floor, cracking down the middle. Professor Morales swept up the pieces quickly, muttering prayers in a language I didn't recognize. "Go," she said. "Never speak of this. Never seek such things again." Emma and I drove home in silence. We never talked about what happened, not really. She moved away after graduation. I heard she became a nurse, dedicating her life to fighting death in her own way. I stayed in town, too afraid to leave, too afraid to live. But here's the thing about curses. They're patient. Last week I was cleaning out my closet and found something wrapped in old newspaper. My hands shook as I unwrapped it, already knowing what I'd find. The whistle was whole again, the crack gone like it had never existed. I've been carrying it for days now, feeling its weight in my pocket. Sometimes I catch myself reaching for it, my fingers tracing its contours. The dreams are back, showing me that empty apartment, that final heartbeat. I'm 35 in the vision. Not old, but older than I am now. I'm telling you this because someone needs to know. If you ever find something that shouldn't exist, something that promises to show you wonders or horrors, walk away. Run Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Some sounds, once heard, echo forever. The whistle is calling to me now. It wants to be blown one more time. It whispers that I was always meant to be its final victim, that the others were just appetizers. Maybe it's lying. Maybe not. But I can feel my resolve weakening, curiosity mixing with despair. If you're listening to this and I've gone silent, you'll know what happened. Check the news for unexplained deaths, bodies aged beyond their years. And if you ever hear that sound, like screaming wind, like dying breath, like the earth opening to swallow you whole, cover your ears and pray. Because death doesn't always wait for its appointed time. Sometimes it comes early, wearing the face you'll have decades from now, summoned by nothing more than a whistle and a moment of weakness. Fear is patient. Fear is hungry. And some sounds can never be unheard. A recording. Evidence, file number 147. I woke up covered in blood that wasn't mine. Not a lot. Just enough. Enough to know something had happened. Enough to know I couldn't remember any of it. My name is David Marsh. I'm 34 years old. I work in accounting. I have a mortgage. I water my lawn on Sundays. I am the kind of man people forget about almost immediately after meeting him. And I think I might be a murderer. The thing is, I don't remember doing it. It started 3 months ago. The sleepwalking, or what I thought was sleepwalking. I'd wake up in different rooms of my house with no memory of moving. The hallway, the basement. Once, standing at my kitchen sink with a knife in my hand, and no idea how it got there. My wife, Sarah, said I was stressed about work, said everyone sleepwalks sometimes, said it was nothing to worry about. But I was worried, because the sleepwalking didn't feel normal. It felt purposeful, like something inside me was using my body while I was sleeping, like I was a passenger in my own skin, watching from behind frosted glass, unable to stop what was happening. I'd lie awake some nights, trying to force myself to stay conscious, trying to keep watch over my own hands. But sleep would come eventually. It always does. And when I woke, I'd be somewhere else. My clothes would be dirty. My feet would be cold. Sarah said I was paranoid, that I needed to see a doctor, that it was probably just stress manifesting in weird ways. She said, "You're fine, David. You're always fine." But I wasn't fine. I knew it. Some part of me, the part that stays awake even when my eyes close, it knew something was wrong. The first news report came on a Thursday morning. A woman found in the park 2 blocks from our house. Attacked. Hurt. Not killed. But hurt in ways that made the local news reporters use careful words and distant voices. I felt my stomach drop, because I remembered walking past that park. Not during the day. At night. I remembered, or did I remember? The memory felt false. Implanted, like something I'd been told about rather than something I'd lived through. I turned up the volume on the television and listened to the description. Brown jacket, dark hair, medium build. Could match hundreds of men in the neighborhood, but it matched me too. I checked my closet. My brown jacket was on the hanger. Clean, but there was dirt on the hem. New dirt. The kind that doesn't come from everyday life. My hands were shaking as I turned off the TV. Police knocked on my door 4 days later. They were polite. Professional. They said they were interviewing everyone in the neighborhood. Just routine. Nothing to worry about. Could I account for my whereabouts on Tuesday night between 10 p.m. and midnight? I couldn't. I told them I was asleep. That I probably sleepwalk sometimes. that I didn't remember anything. They wrote that down. They asked me to come to the station if they had more questions. After they left, I locked all the doors. Every single one. Even though I was terrified of what I'd do if I somehow managed to sleepwalk outside. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch in the dark, fighting the exhaustion, trying to stay conscious. Sarah went to bed without me. I heard her snoring after an hour. At 3 a.m., I felt it, the pull. A sensation like something was tugging at the back of my neck. Not painful, gentle, insistent, like a mother calling a child home. My eyelids felt heavy. My limbs felt thick. I was losing the fight. Sleep was pulling me under, and I couldn't stop it. I remember thinking, this is it. This is when it happens. And then, nothing. Back. Complete absence. I woke up, standing at the kitchen sink. The knife was in my hand again. It was wet. I don't remember what with. I didn't want to know. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely set the knife down. My heart was hammering. My throat was dry. I looked at the back door. The lock was open. The door was ajar. Cold air was coming in. Cold and dark, and carrying the sound of distant sirens. The second victim. They didn't survive. I learned about it on the news. Woman found in the alley behind the strip mall. 42 years old. Mother of 2. Dead. And the description. The description matched someone seen in the area. Brown jacket. Dark hair. Medium built. Police were asking for information. A person of interest had been identified. They had footage from a security camera. Grainy. Low quality. But definitely a man. Definitely someone wearing my jacket. I knew. On some level. The part of me that stays awake even when I sleep. I knew I had done it. But I had no memory. No proof from my own consciousness. Just an absence. A gap. A hole where 3 hours should have been. I called my doctor. Left a message. Said it was urgent. That I needed to talk about the sleepwalking. That something was wrong. He called back that afternoon. Said stress could cause temporary dissociation. That sleepwalking could become more vivid if the mind was troubled. That I should take some medication. That I should get more sleep. More sleep. Like that was the answer. Like sleeping more would fix the fact that every time I closed my eyes, I became someone else. I started leaving notes for myself. When I woke up, I'd find pieces of paper in my own handwriting. Messages I didn't remember writing. Stop fighting. Let me out. You can't hold me anymore. At first, I thought I'd written them while sleepwalking. But then the messages started changing. Started becoming more specific. I know what you've done. What you're doing. I've been waiting such a long time. Your blood calls to me. Your guilt opens the door. You cannot sleep forever, David. I didn't write those. I couldn't have. But there was no one else in the house. Just me and Sarah. And she didn't believe me. She said I was writing them. That I was having a breakdown. That I needed psychiatric help. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was having a breakdown. Maybe everything I was experiencing was in my head. A psychological deterioration dressed up as folklore and supernatural horror. But then I found the journal. It was in the attic. Behind a box of Christmas decorations. Old leather. Falling apart. Pages yellow with age. The name on the front, Thomas Marsh. 1890. My great-grandfather. I opened it with shaking hands and started reading. The night caller has taken me again. I woke in the forest with blood under my fingernails. A man is dead in the village. They blame the wolves, but I know. I remember the moment when I stopped being myself, when something else took over, when the darkness inside me, the guilt from things I've done, found a way to walk around in my own skin. Father said the curse came with our bloodline, that our family carries something old, something hungry, something that feeds on guilt and shame and secret violence. He said it's called a night caller, an entity that waits in sleep, waiting for someone burdened enough to let it in. I must stay awake. I must fight, because once it fully takes over, once it stops merely borrowing my body and starts living in it, I will be gone, completely gone, a passenger trapped behind eyes that are no longer mine. Every night I resist, every night I lose a little more of myself. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The entries stopped there. The next page was blank, and the page after that, and the page after that, all blank, as if Thomas Marsh simply stopped writing, stopped existing, stopped resisting. I found newspaper clippings in the back of the journal, articles from 1/8/9/2, multiple murders in the town where my great-grandfather lived, unsolved, brutal, all happening at night, all perpetrated by someone who seemed to vanish into shadow before authorities could close in. And then, nothing. The killing stopped. Thomas Marsh died in an asylum 2 years later. Official cause, suicide. Manner, overdose of medication. But the journal suggested something else. Suggested he stopped fighting. Suggested he let the night caller take him completely. Suggested that death was mercy. I read my grandfather's name in a different journal I found, and my father's name in a letter tucked behind the foundation of the house. The night caller, passed down, waiting for the child burdened enough, the child guilty enough, the child with enough darkness in his heart that the entity could find purchase. My father had left me a note. I found it in an envelope, with my name on it, tucked in a family Bible I didn't even know we owned. David, if you're reading this, then you understand what we are. What runs in our blood. I spent 40 years fighting it, 40 years trying to stay awake, trying to resist, but it gets easier to give in, the longer you fight, until one day, you realize you're not fighting anymore. You're hiding from yourself, from what you've always wanted to do. The guilt that feeds it? David, the guilt doesn't come from sleepwalking. The sleepwalking comes from the guilt. It's a door we open, a permission we give. When we feel guilty enough, ashamed enough, angry enough, that's when it can walk in our skin. I chose a different path. I left. I tried to break the cycle. I moved away from the family, married someone outside the bloodline, tried to convince myself it was gone, but it was always there, waiting, hungry. And now it's found you, because you carry guilt too, David. I've always known the things you've thought about, the violence you've fantasized about, the anger you've kept locked away. You can fight. You can stay awake. You can do what Thomas did. Hold on until holding on breaks you. Or, you can let me tell you what I learned. The night caller doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to free you. It wants to give your hands permission to do what your mind has always desired. Choose quickly, because soon, the choice won't matter anymore. Sleep will claim you completely, and I'm not sure there's enough of you left to wake up. I haven't slept in 9 days. I've stopped pretending. Stop telling myself this is psychological. Stop trying to explain it with science or stress or mental illness. The police came back yesterday. They had more questions. They had evidence now. Forensic evidence. My fingerprints on the weapon used in the second murder. My DNA under the victim's fingernails. I didn't deny it, but I didn't confess either. I just sat there, quiet, knowing that no explanation would matter, that the truth, whatever it is, wouldn't set me free. Because I've realized something terrifying. I'm not sure if I'm actually fighting the Nightcaller anymore, or if I've been the thing doing the fighting all along. What if every night I thought something else was taking over? I was just finally giving in to what I've always been. What if the sleepwalking was never possession, but permission? Permission to do the things I've fantasized about. Permission to act on the violence I've buried so deep I convince myself it's not really me. What if the only thing keeping me human is staying awake? What if the moment I sleep, I'm finally free to be what I've always wanted to be? Sarah left 2 days ago. She said she couldn't live with a man she didn't recognize anymore. A man who stayed awake until he shook with exhaustion. A man whose eyes had stopped focusing on anything real. She was right to leave. She's safe now. But I'm not. Because my eyes are closing. I can feel it. The exhaustion is becoming unbearable. The pull toward sleep is growing stronger with every passing hour. Soon, very soon, I won't be able to fight it anymore. And when I sleep, I'm not sure what will wake up in my place. Or maybe that's the real horror. Maybe when I sleep, nothing will wake up at all. Maybe I'll just finally stop pretending to be David Marsh. Stop pretending to be a good man. Stop pretending to be human. And the thing that's been waiting in the dark, the thing that whispers in my dreams, will finally get to use these hands the way they've always wanted to be used. I can hear them knocking now. The police? At my door. They have a warrant. They're coming to take me away. And part of me, the part I've been fighting, is relieved. Because in custody, I'll have to sleep. They'll force medication. They'll lock me in a cell. And finally, I'll have permission to stop resisting. I'm recording this because I need someone to know, to understand, to learn from this. The Nightcaller isn't ancient magic or supernatural possession, or any of the folklore explanations I've been using to explain what's happening. It's simpler than that. Darker than that. It's the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge while we're awake. The darkness we push down. The violence we control. The anger we contain. And the moment we sleep, the moment we let our guard down, it gets to walk around in our skin. To do the things our waking self says we would never do. But would we? If we really thought about it. If we really admitted what we think about late at night, maybe the sleepwalking isn't the horror. Maybe the horror is that our bodies know what our minds refuse to accept. Maybe the real Nightcaller is the version of ourselves that's been waiting to be released. And maybe the only thing keeping that version locked away is the exhaustion of staying awake. David Marsh was found unconscious in his home when police broke down the door. He was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder. He remains in psychiatric care at Westfield Correctional Facility, where he has been observed to exhibit unusual sleeping patterns. Medical staff report that Marsh sleeps with his eyes partially open, that he sometimes speaks in languages that don't appear in any known linguistic database, that he occasionally wakes with no memory of how he got to different parts of the facility, despite locked doors and security measures. When asked about the murders, Marsh gives only one response. I don't remember. The sleepwalking was the only time I wasn't in control. Now that I'm awake, now that I'm finally conscious, I have perfect clarity about every single thing I've done. Security footage from his cell shows Marsh sleeping for exactly 4 hours per night. During the other 20 hours, he sits motionless on his bunk, staring, waiting, as if listening to something the cameras cannot hear. 3 inmates have died under mysterious circumstances since his arrival, all found in their cells in the morning, all with expressions of absolute terror frozen on their faces. Forensic analysis of Marsh's cell shows no signs of violence, no struggle, no physical evidence, only a smell, described by guards as like old cloth and cold air, and a single note written in Marsh's handwriting, left on his bunk the morning after each death. Thank you for the practice. Sleep protects us from ourselves, until it doesn't. The moment we close our eyes, we surrender control to something we don't fully understand. And sometimes, that something has been waiting a very, very long time. The night caller is real. But maybe it was never something that came from outside. Maybe it was always inside, just waiting for permission to come out. And permission is something we give ourselves every single night when we let our guard down. Every time we close our eyes, we're betting that the person who wakes up will be the same person who fell asleep. But what if, one night, that bet doesn't pay off? What if the one who wakes up isn't us at all?